You know that feeling when you check your portfolio and it looks exactly the same as last month? Like, you've been contributing every paycheck, doing everything right, and the number just sits there, barely moving, almost mocking you? Maybe it even dipped a little because the market had a rough week, and you sit there thinking, is this even working? Am I just throwing money into a void? Yeah, I know that feeling. Honestly, almost everyone who's ever invested money knows that feeling. My name is Rick, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking about money, specifically why people make the financial decisions they do, and why so many smart, disciplined people end up walking away from investing at the exact worst possible time. Not because they're dumb, not because they're lazy, but because of something that happens in their brain, something almost nobody warns them about. And here's the thing I want to get into today. There's a specific moment, a specific point in the compounding journey where most people quit. Like statistically, predictably, almost on schedule, people bail right before things get good, right before the curve starts bending upward in a way that actually feels rewarding. It's almost cruel, honestly, when you think about it. It's like quitting the gym the week before you'd start seeing real muscle definition, or giving up on learning guitar right before your fingers stop hurting and music starts coming out. So in this video, I want to walk you through what that moment actually looks like, why our brains are basically wired to bail right before it, and, more importantly, how you can recognize it when it's happening to you so you don't become another statistic in the almost made it pile. Because trust me, there's nothing worse than looking back 10 years later and realizing you were so close. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about what compounding actually looks like in real life because, and I say this with love, the way it's portrayed in finance content is kind of a lie. Or, well, not a lie exactly, but a misleading simplification. You've seen the graphs, right? That smooth, elegant curve that swoops upward like a ski jump. Very satisfying, very motivating, completely useless as a representation of what your actual account balance is going to feel like month to month. Here's what compounding actually feels like in the early years. Nothing. Just nothing. You put in $500 a month and your account goes up by, what, $500-ish? Maybe a little more if the market's having a good month, maybe less, or even negative if it's not. The growth portion of your returns is so tiny compared to your contributions that it's basically invisible. It's like trying to notice a candle burning brighter in a room that's already flooded with sunlight. I remember, and this is a small personal thing, but it stuck with me, checking my own investment account maybe 2 years into actually taking this seriously and doing the math on how much of my balance was my money versus growth, and it was something like 97% my money. 3% growth, 3%, after 2 years of consistent investing. And I remember feeling this little gut punch of like, what's even the point? And that, right there, is the moment. That's the moment so many people quit. Not because the market crashed, not because they lost money, but because they did the math, realized how little their money was working for them, and thought, reasonably, I could just keep this in cash and basically be in the same spot. But here's why that thinking, while understandable, is completely backwards. Compounding isn't linear. It's not like a savings account where you get a steady trickle every month that slowly adds up in a predictable way. Compounding is exponential, which means almost all of the growth happens in the back half of the timeline. Like, not more growth happens later. Almost all of it does. If you're investing for 30 years, a huge chunk of your final balance, often more than half, comes from growth that happens in roughly the last decade, which means those first several years. They're not really about growth at all. They're about building the base. They're the unglamorous, invisible scaffolding that the actual building gets constructed on top of later. And scaffolding isn't supposed to look impressive. It's just supposed to hold. The takeaway here, and I want you to actually sit with this one, is that if your investment account feels boring and slow right now, that's not a sign something's wrong. That is the process. That's what it's supposed to feel like. The boredom is the price of admission. And the people who push through the boring years are the ones who get to the interesting years. Alright, so let's talk about what I sometimes call the crossover point, because honestly I think this concept alone could change how you feel about investing if you really internalize it. Here's the idea. Early on, basically 100% of your account growth comes from you. Your contributions, your paycheck, your discipline. The market's contribution is just kind of rounding error. But at some point, and this point arrives later than people expect, which is part of the problem, the math flips. There's a crossover where the growth generated by your existing investments starts to outpace what you're personally contributing. Your money starts pulling more weight than you are. Your money gets a job. And not just any job. It works nights, weekends, holidays, doesn't ask for a raise, doesn't complain. It's honestly the best employee you'll ever have. For a lot of people investing a meaningful percentage of their income, this crossover tends to happen somewhere in the, let's say, rough range of 7 to 12 years in, depending on returns, contribution amounts, all that. But, and this is the cruel part, the years leading up to it often look and feel the most discouraging. Because you're approaching the inflection point, but you can't see it yet. It's like driving toward a hill at night with your headlights only reaching so far. The road looks flat right up until suddenly it isn't. I think about this with a friend of mine. I won't use her real name, let's call her Dana, who started investing aggressively in her late 20s. Did everything right, maxed out her retirement accounts, kept costs low, didn't panic during dips, and around year 6 or 7 she came to me and was like, "Jordan, I've put in like $80,000 over these years, and my account is only worth like $95,000. Is this it? Is this just what it is?" And I get why she felt that way. A $15,000 gain on $80,000 of contributions over 7 years feels underwhelming. But what she couldn't see, what none of us can really see in the moment, is that the $95,000 she had at that point was about to become the new base for compounding. That $95,000 wasn't just a number, it was a seed that was about to start growing in a way her contributions alone never could. Fast forward a few more years, and her contributions were still roughly the same. Same job, same percentage of income. But her account growth from market returns alone started exceeding her annual contributions. Some years, the market did more for her account in a few good months than she did with an entire year of paycheck deductions. That's the crossover. That's the moment everything changes. And here's the kicker. Most people quit right before this. Like, in the years immediately preceding the crossover, when the gap between what I'm putting in and what I'm getting out feels the widest and the most discouraging. That's exactly when people throw in the towel. They stop contributing. They cash out. They decide investing doesn't work for people like me. And they walk away with the seed still too small to grow into anything, robbing themselves of the very thing they were working toward. The takeaway: if you're in those discouraging years, and you might be right now, try to reframe what you're looking at. You're not failing to see growth. You're building the base that growth will eventually come from. Stay the course, even when the math feels unfair, especially when it feels unfair. So, why does this happen? Why do smart people, people who logically know compounding works, still bail right before it kicks in? Honestly, it comes down to how our brains evolved to think about time and reward. We are, fundamentally, creatures built for immediate feedback. Did I throw the spear and hit the thing? Yes or no, right now. Our brains did not evolve in an environment where the payoff for an action might not show up for like 15 years. There's a concept in psychology, present bias, or sometimes called hyperbolic discounting. Basically the idea that we value rewards in the near future way more than rewards in the distant future, even when the distant reward is objectively, mathematically larger. It's why people will take $50 today over $100 in a year, even though that's a terrible trade financially. Our brains just discount the future really aggressively. It's not a moral failing. It's not stupidity. It's basically a software bug that's been in the human operating system since forever. And investing is basically the worst possible activity for a brain with present bias. Because the entire value proposition of investing is give up something now for something much better later, where later might be decades away. Of course, people struggle with this. We're asking Stone Age brains to plan for retirement. There's also something called the Valley of Disappointment. I didn't coin this. I think it comes from habit formation research, but it applies so well to investing. The idea is that when you start any compounding activity, habits, skills, investing, whatever, your expectations rise faster than your actual results do. You expect a hockey stick curve from day one, but reality gives you a flat line for a while. The gap between expectation and reality creates this growing sense of disappointment, frustration, even shame. And that gap is usually at its worst right before results start to catch up to expectations, right before the curve bends. So you've got present bias making the wait feel unbearable, and the valley of disappointment making the wait feel like proof that it's not working. It's basically a perfect storm engineered to make you quit at the worst time. Now, knowing this doesn't magically fix it. I wish I could tell you, just know about this bias and you'll be immune to it, but that's not really how brains work. But, and this is important, awareness does give you something. It gives you a reference point. When you're in that valley, when everything feels pointless, you can recognize, oh, this is the thing Jordan was talking about. This is the valley. This is supposed to feel like this. And that recognition alone can be enough to keep you going one more month, one more contribution, one more year. Okay, so knowing all this, what do you actually do with it? Let's get practical for a second. First thing, automate everything. I cannot stress this enough. The boring years are exactly when willpower is least reliable, because willpower requires you to make an active decision every single time, and every single time is an opportunity to talk yourself out of it. If your contributions happen automatically, paycheck to investment account, no human decision required, you remove yourself from the equation entirely. You're essentially building a system that works even when you emotionally don't believe in it anymore. And honestly, that's the whole game. Second, and this one's a little counterintuitive, check your accounts less often during the flat years. I know, everyone says stay informed, be engaged with your money. But there's actually decent research suggesting that people who check their portfolios less frequently tend to make fewer panic-driven decisions and end up with better long-term results. Checking your portfolio during a flat or down period is basically just volunteering for disappointment. Why would you do that to yourself on purpose? It's like weighing yourself every single day when you're trying to lose weight. The day-to-day noise just drowns out the actual signal, and all you're left with is noise-induced anxiety. Third, and this is more of a mindset thing, try tracking your contributions as a win, separate from your portfolio's performance. Like, give yourself credit for the discipline itself, independent of what the market did that month. Because honestly, the market doing well or poorly in any given month has basically nothing to do with you. But showing up, putting the money in, month after month, year after year, that's you. That's the part you control. And that's the part that's actually building your future, regardless of what the squiggly line is doing in the meantime. Fourth thing, and I think this one's underrated, find some kind of visual or way to see the crossover point coming even roughly. Even a simple spreadsheet projection, plugging in your numbers and a reasonable estimated return, and looking at where the lines cross. Because here's the thing, once you see that crossover point on a chart, even as a rough projection, it stops being this abstract theoretical thing and becomes a destination, something you're walking toward. And it's a lot easier to keep walking toward a destination you can see than toward some vague, foggy idea of eventually it'll be fine. So look, here's what I really want you to take away from all this. The flat, boring, slightly discouraging years of investing aren't a sign that something's broken. They're not a signal to bail. They're the scaffolding. They're the seed. They're the part of the story that nobody puts in the highlight reel, but without which there is no highlight reel. And the crossover point, that moment where your money starts working harder than you do, it's real. It happens, but it happens on its own schedule. And that schedule usually runs a little later and feels a little more uncertain than we'd like. The investors who make it to the other side aren't the ones who never felt discouraged. They're the ones who felt discouraged and kept contributing anyway, who recognized the valley for what it was, a normal, predictable, almost universal part of the process, instead of a verdict on whether investing works for them. So if you're in that valley right now, if your account feels like it's barely moving, if the math feels unfair, if you've ever quietly wondered whether this is all just a waste of time, I want you to know that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. Honestly, it might be a sign you're closer than you think. Don't quit on the boring chapter. The interesting one's coming. Just keep showing up for it. If you found this informative, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.